Good morning, Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, I'm Michael Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning. The NRA calls for bump stock regulations, and white nationalist Richard Spencer will speak at UF. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
So we're finding out more information on the Las Vegas shooter. Unfortunately, we still don't really know a motive. We're going to talk about that coming up next.
And good Friday morning at 6:01 on News Radio 102.5. The National Rifle Association is calling for an immediate review of federal regulations on bump stocks. In its first statement since the deadly mass shooting in Las Vegas, the NRA urged the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to determine if the devices comply with federal law. About a dozen bump stocks were found in the hotel room of the Las Vegas gunman. The devices allow semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic weapons. But the NRA stopped short of calling for new legislation. It also criticized some lawmakers for pushing gun control following the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank.
Yeah, it's pretty big news. We're going to talk about that a lot in the 7 o'clock hour. Some people were surprised.
I was one of those people who was surprised.
It actually hasn't been legal that long. It's a relatively new device.
It really has, and from what I've been hearing is that people who are gun enthusiasts tend to not like bump stocks because it has some ability to change the accuracy and some other issues with it. So it'll be interesting. I just find it interesting that the NRA has come out.
Yeah, I mean, I know the Republicans have kind of come out and Trump's kind of come out saying he's open to it. That didn't surprise me too much, but the NRA coming out with it, it's a big deal.
Absolutely. And coming up in the 7 o'clock hour, Mike, when you're getting ready to talk about the bump stock, I'll have some news about Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd, which you may find fairly surprising.
Well, I'll have to find out.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to keep you on pins and needles on the edge of your seat.
I would expect nothing less. Then.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, in the meantime, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised to hear this, but that rifle part used by the Las Vegas shooter to kill dozens of people is now in high demand. Stephen Paddock had modified his rifle with a bump stock when he killed 58 people at a concert in Las Vegas Sunday. Now gun dealers say bump stocks are selling fast. Reports say it's likely because gun users fear the device will soon be banned. Speaking of the Las Vegas shooter, it turns out he looked into hotel rooms near other large events in other large cities like Boston and Chicago. According to investigators, Chicago police say Stephen Paddock booked rooms at a hotel during last summer's Lollapalooza music festival near Grant Park. They say he booked a hotel room in Chicago around the time of the show in early August, but never showed up. Senior law enforcement officials in Boston also said Paddock looked into hotel rooms near Fenway Park earlier this year, which just makes it so hard to figure out exactly what this guy's motive was. Was it just large festivals?
Yeah, other than killing a lot of people.
Exactly. It looks like there's no other motive.
Yeah, I have some more information on him as well. He seems kind of a disturbed individual. I mean, obviously he is if he did something like this. But some of the stuff I'm finding out is very strange.
It's strange, and what's troubling is that because he lives such a secretive, reclusive life, it's making it that much more difficult for investigators to be able to uncover the motive, the answer we're all waiting for.
Exactly.
Back here in the Sunshine State, I was surprised by this story as well. White nationalist Richard Spencer is scheduled to speak at UF this month. He's contracted to give an address at the Phillips Center on October 19th. University officials say they plan to spend at least $500,000 to secure the event. Our other wondering what's going on with the weather. Brevard County under a flooding threat. Poor Brevard and Volusia counties. The good news is the northwest Florida Gulf Coast is no longer forecast to experience a direct landfall from Tropical Storm Nate. Computer models from the National Hurricane Center shifted the 5-day forecast of the storm's path westward, removing the state of Florida, or most of it, from the cone of uncertainty. We have 3 counties that could still make me have to come in and work this weekend. Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, and Escambia counties, the 3 westernmost counties in Florida's Panhandle. The forecasters at the National Weather Service office in Mobile expect Florida's western reaches to experience tropical storm force winds throughout the day Sunday, with an estimated 3 to 5 inches of rain to fall through the end of the day on Monday. The system itself is expected to make landfall somewhere between New Orleans or Biloxi on Sunday as a minimal Category 1 hurricane.
I mean, good news for most of Florida, not so good for those other states, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, exactly. And even for us here in Central Florida, we're still going to be dealing with the effects of that tropical wave, which isn't expected to strengthen or get a name, but it's what's brought all that rainy weather yesterday and more rainy weather today. And so many areas around Central Florida just have nowhere to put the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's amazing. At the beginning of the year, I remember we had this really big drought.
It was record. Yeah, we had a record-breaking drought, the driest we'd been in 100 and some years.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Be careful what you wish for, I guess.
Exactly. And finally, a launch from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station is scrubbed for a second morning in a row.
We are scrubbing the launch attempt for today. Proceed with preparations for an attempt in 24 hours.
United Launch Alliance says weather was again the problem, preventing liftoff as an Atlas V rocket carrying a spy satellite for the National Reconnaissance Office. The launch is now planned for tomorrow morning at 3:59. Going to be up at 4 on a Saturday, Mike?
No, but I do like how you found a way to still have space control room talk into the show. You still, even though it didn't launch, you still found a way to get it in there. That was good.
I love my space talk. SpaceX was scheduled to launch a Falcon 9 rocket and 2 satellites from the Kennedy Space Center tomorrow. One of those satellites will have a direct effect on what we do right here on the 50,000-watt front porch, but that has moved that launch back to next Wednesday. So luckily, next Wednesday, hopefully I'll have some more Space Geek talk for you. Right now at WFLA News Time at 6:08, read about an NSA contractor who brought classified info home and the Russians got it.
Oh, that's usually why you're not supposed to do that.
Exactly. Used a software program that had just been outlawed for that very reason. But you can get the details yourself at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando with Mike Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
So, Deb, I'm just looking at some breaking news as of this morning. It turns out investigators are looking for a mystery woman seen with the Vegas shooter.
Yeah, there are some reports that they're wondering if he had an accomplice because they're saying all this planning, all these weapons, all the logistics of this, he simply couldn't have done this alone.
Yeah, but apparently he was seen with this woman just days before this happened.
Yeah, at one of the casinos, right?
Yeah, they don't know if she has any connection. They don't even know who she is. But this is a crazy story.
It really, and again, investigators cannot leave any stone unturned or assume that even the most casual interaction doesn't have that little nugget of information that could lead them to the answer.
Right. So I'm going to give the details on that and much more. I appreciate you all joining me this morning. It is 6:09 on Good Morning Orlando. Oh, it's Friday, finally. I just had to throw that out there. This is Yaffee, the producer, filling in for Bud. Bud will be back on Monday. And then we have Mr. Tom Benson.
How do?
Yeah, I remember to introduce you first thing. I felt so bad yesterday I didn't do it. So how are you, Tom?
I'm honored. I'm well, and it's Friday, as you said. What else could go wrong?
Yeah, don't say that, Tom Benson. Don't throw that negative energy out there. Right. Things can find a way, but no. It's Friday, especially after this week with some of the news out there. Yeah, so hopefully we can have a good weekend after this. We're finding out more information on the shooter of the massacre, Stephen Paddock. And unfortunately, we're still not really understanding a motive. According to what Deb was talking about at the top of the hour, and I'm going to play some audio here in a sec from a Fox News report on it. He apparently cased other places, other events. I found this, too, from the Daily Wire. Apparently, Las Vegas casino officials say he had all kinds of bizarre behavior. Casino workers in Las Vegas say mass shooter Stephen Paddock was actually far from the quiet loner he was originally made out to be. In fact, he was a demanding gambler who loved complimentary items and stuff, and whose bizarre aversion to dust and allergens forced casino workers to wash any carpeted surface with plain water before he arrived. What a weirdo. I think it seems like we're finding out that this guy had some serious mental issues. Even though, I mean, in the background checks or anything like that, there was no evidence. His family says they didn't know, which if he did have some kind of mental issues, I would find it very hard to believe that his family didn't know about it. But some strange behavior from him. And then we have reports, like Deb was talking about at the top of the hour, that he was casing other places. Tom Benson, if you could get the audio ready for me on Vegas Cut 1. This is the Fox News radio report on that. Give some details on it.
There's no evidence the Las Vegas gunman actually came to Chicago. The law enforcement officials say he did book a room months ago at the Blackstone Hotel overlooking a park and location of the popular Lollapalooza music festival that attracts hundreds of thousands of people every year. This ahead of a weekend marathon.
We constantly are revising and asking fundamental questions about what goes on.
Mayor Rahm Emanuel says the city is cooperating with the FBI. Investigators say the gunman booked a room overlooking another concert scene in Las Vegas last week, and that he may have had interest in another location in Boston. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Unfortunately, this kind of makes things more confusing rather than give us more answers, because we don't know exactly, other than targeting a lot of people, it doesn't seem like there's any connection to these different festivals. They're totally different kinds of music festivals. So it doesn't seem like, at least so far, he was some kind of Trump hater, which some people thought at the beginning, and that's why he targeted this festival. I don't know. ISIS is still claiming responsibility, by the way. They put out a publication yesterday saying 6 months ago he converted and became a soldier of ISIS. So still a lot we don't know. I want to take a call here from someone who has an interesting take on this. Hector in Orlando. Hector, how are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, Yaffee. Listen, I used to work in a casino. I was a surveillance officer.
Really?
And I used to monitor all the cameras. And everything was recorded 24/7, every hallway, every doorway, everything. Maybe not in the bed, in the rooms itself, but outside, all halls, everything. So they know exactly who that female is. They just don't want to say right now. Because,
okay.
Everything. In fact,
so they would know if she was, really close to him.
Oh, yeah. No. In fact, the technology they have is so incredible, you won't believe it. They take a picture of her, they put it inside the special equipment that we had, and they'll know everything about her, whether she's wanted or, it automatically goes to the FBI. So they're lying. They know.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe they just don't want the information out there as of yet.
As far as this guy is concerned, it could only be two reasons: notoriety or radicalism. He was radicalized, or he did it on his own because he had nothing else left to his life. Maybe he wants to be famous, or he's a killer. Who knows?
Well, Hector, that's a very good possibility. Hopefully, that will help us find out with all that camera video. Like you said, that's a very interesting point. So Wayne LaPierre, president or CEO of the NRA, had some interesting comments that I want to play for you next. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So the CEO of the NRA, Wayne LaPierre, who I like, makes a lot of sense most times. He's obviously very supportive of the Second Amendment, like you would expect. And he was on Fox News last night with Hannity. And, I just talked about it there as well. They put out a statement. Of course, the left going strong on gun control right now. They do it every mass shooting. They don't care about the everyday shootings as much. But when there's a mass shooting, they see an opportunity and they go for it. Now, I personally think they're not going to be happy until guns are banned like it is in some countries in Europe. All you have to do is go on Twitter and see a lot of the leftist trends on Twitter, and that's what they want. They don't want guns in the hands of everyday citizens. Good luck trying to confiscate them all in this country. There's like 300 million of them, if not more. But Wayne LaPierre, he actually made a lot of sense when he talked to Hannity last night on this subject. It's things I've brought up, things you've probably heard before. But I wanted to share them with you. So here it is. Go ahead and play cut one of him for me, Tom Benson.
Yeah, one thing the American public always knows is the elites always protect themselves, and they always protect themselves with guns. and then they lecture the American public how you shouldn't do that. But in the heart of the American public all over this country, they see these monsters, and they don't want to be alone out there. They want to be able to protect themselves. One of the things that happened in Las Vegas, when they said shelter in place, the first thing that came up when they were sheltered, they said, does somebody have a gun? We saw it with the hurricanes this past week in Texas and Florida and places like that, Louisiana. People are, when the water's rising, when it goes dark, the American public values this freedom to protect themselves. And now you have Dianne Feinstein and Schumer and the media to get this horrible tragedy, and they want to piggyback their whole agenda to ban guns, restrict law-abiding people for the last 20 years, this circus on the back of this tragedy and enact it. And what the NRA is fighting for is reciprocity, enforce the existing federal gun laws, protect the Americans' right to protect themselves.
And we should have a right to protect ourselves. You know, in most cases, even if you don't have to fire the gun to be able to protect yourself, just being able to have the gun and showing that you have it can be used to protect yourself. In fact, there was a study done recently from the National Self-Defense Survey that showed incidents like that where someone used a gun to protect themselves, most of the time not fired. It's about 2.2 to 2.5 million times a year in this country. People use a gun to protect themselves. The vast majority of the time, they don't have to fire it. But it's there because it's your right to be able to protect yourself. Now, this next point by Wayne is the point I've been making a lot, and I think it's a great point that the left usually ignores. Here it is.
If legislation worked, Boston Massacre wouldn't have happened. San Bernardino, where California has every gun law you can imagine on the books, that wouldn't have happened. In Paris, where they have complete gun bans, that wouldn't have happened. Brussels, all over the world where the people are disarmed, these monsters, these bad guys go about their business. They could care less what laws are on the books. And the good people want to protect themselves. They want to defend themselves. That's why we're fighting for reciprocity, and they want to preserve this freedom that they know the elites protect for themselves and yet would take away from the honest people and the average people.
See, and that's the best point out there. The idea that legislation is going to stop mass killings. When you're dealing with someone who's willing to do something that vicious, that heinous, laws aren't going to stop him. They're going to find a way. If they don't have the gun, they'll use something else. But even like in Paris is the best example because they have full bans of guns there. And yet they had the concert attacks in Paris, which killed a lot of people. There was also the Charlie Hebdo attacks, which killed a lot of people. And then even some of the cops didn't have guns to be able to protect themselves from the mass killers. So I think his point is well taken there, especially that second point. So we're going to talk more about the NRA and their take on bump stocks. It seems that the Republicans are kind of on board with that, too. We're going to talk about that in the 7 o'clock hour. We have Deborah Roberts, who's coming in to talk about the latest news, including what the NRA said about bump stocks. And a convicted double murderer is executed at the Florida State Prison. It is 6:29 on Good Morning Orlando.
Oh, good one.
So, Deb, we have some pretty big news with the NRA.
Oh, wait, yeah, sorry.
It's Friday. I'll allow it.
Down under.
Deborah Roberts is joining me in the studio. She's going to talk about the latest news. The NRA is calling for maybe some bump stock regulations.
Or at least it's showing its willingness to regulate bump stocks after the deadly Las Vegas mass shooting. In their first statement since Sunday's shooting, and a statement that took many by surprise, including myself and Mike Yaffee, the group stopped short of calling for new legislation. Bump stocks allow semi-automatic guns to fire like fully automatic guns. The statement also criticized lawmakers who are calling for gun control after the shooting. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders says many groups are looking at banning bump stocks.
Both parties and multiple organizations are planning to take a look at bump stocks and related devices. We certainly welcome that, would like to be part of that conversation.
Multiple bump stocks were found in the hotel room of the Vegas shooter. Back here in the Sunshine State, a Florida death row inmate who said his execution would be, quote, an act of cold-blooded murder, end quote, is dead. 57-year-old Michael Lambrix was put to death by lethal injection at Florida State Prison in Stark last night. Before the execution took place, Michelle Gladdy says Lambrix had a Thanksgiving dinner and visited with his family.
He wanted to have a traditional Thanksgiving dinner, which he did. He had his meal with his family. He was visited by his parents, his siblings, and his children this morning from 8 to 11.
Lambrix had been convicted of killing Clarence Moore and Alicia Bryant outside his trailer near LaBelle in Hendry County. That's in southwest Florida. Prosecutors say the double murder followed a long night of drinking back in 1983. New records in the killings of two police officers show a frighteningly accurate prediction by a deputy. A month before Everett Miller apparently shot and killed Kissimmee police officer Matthew Baxter and Sergeant Sam Howard in August, an Osceola County deputy wrote in a report that Miller would cause serious harm if he didn't get treatment. The deputy wrote the report after Miller was taken to a hospital for erratic behavior. The deputy described Miller as delusional, irrational, and sometimes aggressive. And finally, in a sad local story, someone deputies describe as simply goofing around with a gun is accused of being responsible for killing a woman. Orange County deputies say Miss Ayala Martinez was inside her home cooking for her family in Union Park this week when she was hit by a bullet fired from outside her home on Downey Hill Street. Hit right in the chest, just standing in her kitchen cooking a meal for her family.
It's awful.
The home is in a mobile home park near some woods, and deputies believe someone was playing with the gun or maybe having target practice. Deputies are looking for a suspect and say the family needs closure.
Yeah, hopefully they find whoever did it.
Exactly. It's just 46 years old, standing in the kitchen cooking a meal. You can get these stories and more at 1025WFLA.com. The first hour of Good Morning Orlando with Mike Yaffee continues now, and Gina Cervetti and the Bloomberg Business Report in New York City.
Yeah, thank you, Deb. And yes, we have Gina Cervetti from the Bloomberg Newsroom in New York City. Good morning, Gina. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How about yourself?
Doing pretty well. How are the markets doing this morning?
Well, they're a little sleepy right now as they are in wait-and-see mode ahead of the September employment report. More on that in a moment. We did have more records yesterday on Wall Street with the 8th straight gain, thanks in part to some economic news, including durable goods order activity that was better than expected. The Dow was up 114 to 22,755. The S&P rose 14 or 0.6% to 2555, and the Nasdaq jumped 51 to 6585. The Bloomberg Orlando Index was up 0.4% on the session.
So what do we expect from the jobs report?
Well, this report will come out an hour before Wall Street's opening bell, as it always does. The September report, economists surveyed by Bloomberg, should show, on average, an increase of 80,000 jobs. But the numbers are tricky here. First of all, the reason that number is relatively low is because of the effects of the hurricanes Harvey and Irma. But some analysts are saying, too, that because of the difficulty in judging the storm's effect on the numbers this time around, we could see anything from a decline of 45,000 jobs to an increase of 153,000.
Oh, so we have no idea. Sounds like until we find out. Interesting. Costco has a good quarter, but investors aren't excited. What's that about?
The shares are lower in pre-market trading, even though Costco's results were better than estimated. The investors are looking for better numbers here than even what Costco is showing. They want to see indications that the company can weather the longer-term challenges in retail. The growth rate at Costco is better than some of its rivals, but the Warehouse Club is facing fresh challenges to its business. Amazon is integrating its acquisition of Whole Foods. That encroaches on some of Costco's turf. And Sam's Club is offering more web-friendly services, and that's an approach that Costco so far has not embraced.
Very interesting. And after a massive data breach like the one Equifax had recently, people do have the option to freeze their credit, but many don't do it. Right, Gina?
That's right. Few of us actually do, even in the wake of that Equifax breach, which impacted the information on 143 million Americans. A Gartner research analyst says the Equifax breach might push the number to 5% of consumers that actually freeze their credit. Right now, she estimates that it's 2 to 3%. Some may be confused about what a credit freeze does or how to put it into place. In some cases, in some states, it's free, but in other cases, you'll pay a fee to lift the credit freeze if you need to. You do have to do the credit freeze at each of the 3 major bureaus. That's Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. What it does is essentially stop anybody from opening any kind of credit in your name. You get a PIN number at the time that you have to, you really have to set that aside because they're not going to send it to you in the future if you need to temporarily lift the freeze. If you're trying to get credit on your own, which you'll need to do every time you apply for new credit. And this is the sad news here, which I did not understand. The analyst estimates that a freeze will protect you from fewer than 5% of the kinds of financial crimes that you're subject to.
No, really?
But that is still better than nothing. However, I really
guess.
kind of expected a larger number than that.
Yeah, I did as well. I'm pretty surprised by that as well. Interesting. All right, Gina, thank you so much, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You too.
So President Trump caused some controversy again, and yes, he did it on Twitter. We're going to talk about that, and we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLN. And this is Yaffee, the producer, filling in for Bud. Bud will be back on Monday. We have Tom Benson, who's in the control room, producing. If you want to send me a friend request on Facebook, just search Michael Yaffee, send it. I will accept it. I'm always posting all kinds of interesting stuff on there that creates all kinds of debate and sometimes takes over my day if I let it, which I should not let it. You have to prioritize these things in your life. But, yeah, you can send me a friend request. You can also check out my show, the podcast of my show, Beyond Reason Radio. Just go to beyondreasonradio.com or listen on the iHeart Radio app. We usually have a lot of fun. Tom Benson usually produces that one, and we usually have a lot of fun doing that show in the evening.
It keeps me awake.
Well, that's good. Thanks. What a ringing endorsement.
But I'm a morning guy, and I need something like that to keep me awake in the evening. I'll tell you.
Okay, so President Trump has been keeping some people awake as usual. He put out this tweet yesterday, and I want to get everyone's reaction to this. He tweeted out this. Why isn't the Senate Intel Committee looking into the fake news networks in our country to see why so much of our news is just made up fake? Now, this goes with his usual trend of calling mainstream media outlets fake news like CNN and MSNBC and others. This came in the wake of the Senate Intel Committee saying yesterday that they'd reached no conclusion on whether Trump's campaign was colluding with Russia, but they did conclude, according to them, that Russia did try to interfere in the presidential election. I have to admit, I don't really understand this. I mean, I get it. He's going after the media. That's what he usually does. But they didn't even accuse Trump of anything here. All they did is say Russia was trying to interfere, which a lot of people on both sides believe they tried to interfere. They didn't say that Trump was involved or anything. And yet Trump comes out and says this. I don't understand I don't know why he's always so immediately defensive of Russia. It's kind of annoying to me. I don't get it. I get why he did this because that's what Trump does. He just punches back. He feels like he has to punch back no matter what. But frankly, I don't like the idea of Congress having committees on what the press is doing in this country.
Well, there's some testimony coming up November 1st. The executive suits from the social media companies, Google, Twitter, Facebook, and the like, are going to be testifying November 1st in both the House and Senate committees.
Yeah, and that's not really about what they're doing specifically, but about how some fake news outlets are using their platforms to put it out there. And some of that worries me too, honestly, because I'm not for censorship. But I don't like the idea of our federal government starting to look into free speech in this country. Just because we don't like what some of these media outlets are saying, like me. I know they're biased, most of them. I know they're biased against Trump. I get it. But I mean, imagine the shoe on the other foot here. Imagine if President Obama, when he was in office, came out and said, why doesn't Congress look into Fox News? Because they're fake. I think we would be up in arms about that. I don't think we can. Now, do I think Trump actually wants this to happen? Nah, not really. I think he just put this out there as a reaction, which he usually does, to something that happened. But as a small government guy who believes in the First Amendment, who believes in freedom of speech and protecting speech even that I disagree with, which a lot of these media outlets say things that I disagree with, I don't really like the idea of our federal government having major committees and looking into this kind of stuff and them determining what fake news is. Do you really trust Congress to determine what fake news is? I don't trust them to determine that. So as much as we want to initially support Trump when he says stuff like this, yeah, he's against the media. I get it. But I can't support him here. But what do you think? Am I wrong on this? Do you love what Trump said? Do you think the Senate Intel Committee should be looking into the news networks in this country? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Standard message and data rates apply. I want someone who disagrees with me as well. We'll have a good conversation. Call in, text. I want to know what you think about this. We'll take your calls and text next, of course. And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WF. I tend to be very, very strong on the First Amendment and free speech, even more than maybe a lot of people on my side. I mean, Richard Spencer just gave that story. That's a great example of a guy I hate everything that guy says, pretty much. Can't stand his views. Hate racism. But he has a right to say them in this country, I believe. I don't believe in Congress looking into things just because we disagree with what they're saying. Looking into our media outlets just because we disagree with what they're saying. I think the Senate has more important things to do, and the Senate Intelligence Committee has more important things to do than that. Now, Trump is just doing this as a reaction, as a defensive reaction, because he feels like they're attacking him over the Russia stuff, even though they didn't say that yesterday. But just put the shoe on the other foot. If this was Obama saying the same thing, you all would be up in arms about it. We have some calls and texts coming in. Let's take a call here. Let's go to Mike in Oviedo. Mike, what's your take on this?
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me on your show.
Sure.
I think he's reacting to this Tillerson deal where supposedly Tillerson was saying he was going to resign. That was real recent.
That's a great point. I think that is part of this.
Yeah, I don't know if he's really reacting to this most recent thing, but I don't think we should have freedom of speech impacted in any way or monitored by government unless it's inciting violence. So, I agree with you on that, but I think he's reacting to that Tillerson deal.
Yeah, the only reason I said the other thing is he said in Senate Intelligence Committee. It's a pretty specific thing, really doesn't have to do with Tillerson. But yeah, you're talking about the Tillerson thing where they reported that Tillerson called him a moron, and they had to do a whole press conference, saying he didn't. He said that's fake news. But yeah, I appreciate your call. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that he didn't want that Tillerson has never wanted to resign, and it was floated out that he wanted to, and that Pence convinced him to stay. And I think it's partially that. So anyway, thanks for having me on your show. You have a good morning, sir.
Yeah, you too. Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of this, to be honest with you. But when he talks specifically Senate Intelligence Committee, I'm thinking, okay, there's a little more to it than that as well. Got some texts coming in. One person said, I don't like the idea of the committee, but I do have a problem with the media purposely inducing panic and causing riots based on misinformation, which affects public safety. I'm one of these people too. A lot of things these mainstream media outlets do is, I definitely don't support it. There's a lot of bias there. You want to talk about bias in the media. There's 3 books that I want you to read on it. And they're from different sides of the political aisle. There's Stonewalled by Cheryl Atkinson, where she talks about how she couldn't cover stuff at CBS News because of media bias. There's Muzzled by Juan Williams, who's a liberal, but he got kicked out of NPR for saying something that was not politically correct. And he went over to Fox, and even though he's a liberal, he says, there's media bias. And then I want you to read John Stossel's book, No, the Government Can't. He talks about how he couldn't cover things at ABC News because of media bias. So it's definitely out there, but to have a committee against that. Now, one person said this on the text line, President Trump is not against the media. He's against the trash tabloid-style reporting adopted by the mainstream media. That's true. I think there's some truth to that. Although, I think he likes the attention, too, honestly. But let's go to Joe in Titusville. Joe, what's your take on this?
Well, I think it's a little bit more trying to delegitimize the military. Because if any president, either party, would have done half the stuff that Trump has done, he'd already been impeached.
You said to delegitimize the military. You mean the media?
No, the media.
Okay, the media. Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, because the thing is that there's a lot of stories out on Trump. I'm from New York. I lived through the 80s and all that. There's a lot of tabloid out there on Trump. There's tons of it, And the thing is that by delegitimizing the media, he wants the people not to believe anything the media says. And most leaks are coming out of the White House. Now, it's not like the media, makes this stuff up. Somebody's telling them something. He needs to clean up his White House. His White House is where most of this information is coming from, whether it's right, left, or indifferent. And what the reason is for it, I don't know. But
there's a lot of misinformation out there coming from some of these media outlets too. I appreciate your call though on that. I have people saying, this is propaganda. Do you support propaganda? I support freedom of speech, even if I don't like it. Deborah Roberts is going to come in at the top of the hour and update us on the latest news, including the NRA calls for bump stock regulations. We're going to talk about that big time in the next half hour. It is 6:59 and Good Morning Orlando. Good morning, Orlando. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, I'm Michael Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and our top stories this morning, the NRA calls for bump stock regulations, and the Polk County Sheriff calls for a gun control law. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
And I want to take your calls and texts on the idea of banning bump stocks. Is that the solution? Are there other solutions? Or are you against any kind of gun control, including this? Talk about that this half hour.
And good Friday morning. It's 7:03 on News Radio 102.5. The National Rifle Association wants to see a review done on federal regulations of bump stocks. The NRA is pushing the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to evaluate if the devices comply with federal law. The hotel room of the Las Vegas gunman had about a dozen bump stocks in it. The device basically allows a semi-automatic rifle to function just like an automatic weapon. The NRA also criticized some lawmakers for pushing gun control following the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank.
Yeah, we're going to take calls and texts on that this half hour. I'm trying to look up information. I don't think that device has been used in any of these other mass shootings.
Not that I have heard of.
I'm pretty sure it was not used in Pulse.
No, no, because I believe that would have been one of the first details we would have been given.
Okay. That's what I thought. From everything I've read, I have not seen it used in any of these other mass shootings.
Which I think is why, because it gave him the kind of capabilities it gave him. That's why
people thought it was. We had callers here thought it was like an M60 or something, or an AK or something.
AR-15.
That's what it sounded like.
Exactly. I obviously don't know my guns, but we did have some former military members who had called and said, listen, that sounds just like the machine gun I handled when I was in the service.
Right, yeah.
So I think that's the reason why we're seeing everyone from the NRA to the neighbor next door saying, well, maybe it's time to rethink these bump stocks.
Yep.
And that includes Polk County's outspoken sheriff, who's calling for Congress to act on gun control. The comments came yesterday after former Floridian Stephen Paddock killed 58 people on Sunday, injured more than 500 with that device that turned his guns into fully automatic weapons. Grady Judd says he is an advocate of the Second Amendment, which guarantees the right to bear arms, but wants a ban on those devices like the one used Sunday.
It has nothing to do with whether you have the right to possess a firearm. It has everything to do with devices that are specifically designed to take a normal firearm or a semi-automatic firearm and make it function as if it's fully automatic.
He says the law should be created in a bipartisan and non-political manner. Also on the Gulf Coast, Hillsborough Sheriff's Colonel Donna Luzinski says it's been nearly 3 months since the body of 13-year-old Janessa Shannon was discovered in the Triple Creek Nature Preserve.
We've conducted numerous interviews, obtained and served various search warrants, collected multiple pieces of evidence, and submitted them to various labs. And at this time, we're happy to say we've made an arrest in the case. We arrested Nashawn Shannon, Jessica's father, charging him with aggravated child abuse and first-degree felony murder.
Luzinski won't release any details on the circumstances surrounding Janessa's murder, but she says Shannon and his daughter had an argument that ended in her death. And finally, Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton is apologizing for sexist comments he made to a reporter this week. Newton posted a video on social media.
My word choice was extremely degrading and disrespectful to women. And to be honest, that was not my intention.
His apology came a day after Newton dismissed a question from reporter Jordan Rodriguez about pass routes as being funny to hear coming from a female. Did you see the presser?
Yeah. Oh, we played it yesterday during Sound Judgment.
Okay. Well, the gaff.
It was very unusual, actually. He said that. I was like, okay.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, really? It's okay. It's still 2017, right?
Well, I mean, there's a lot, and to me, there's lots of female reporters that ask questions like that all the time. So I was kind of like, okay.
That's why I was thinking to myself, what are we, 1965? What is this? The gaff, this is why he apologized. The gaff cost Newton a sponsor as yogurt maker Dannon announced it was cutting ties with the quarterback.
Oh, wow. That's a little harsh, but.
Yeah, that apology, that was his wallet crying.
The NFL, just what they needed, another scandal.
Yay! They might have probably sent him a basket of mini muffins to thank him. WFLA News Time at 7:07. Read about the FBI tracing a racist threat to a Panera Bread Wi-Fi for their arrest.
Really?
Got to be careful when you use those open Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
They're going to find you. You can read that. Get the details now at 1025WFLA.com. The second hour of Good Morning Orlando starts now.
News, weather, and traffic for the best audience in talk radio. This is Good Morning Orlando
on News Radio 102.5.
So as it looks right now, the Trump administration, Republicans in Congress, and the NRA are all thinking maybe it's time to ban bump stocks. These devices that help you fire semi-automatics, make them more like automatic weapons. Do you think that's the right move? Do you think that is the solution here? Do you think it's going to happen, first off? And do you think it's the right thing to do? 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Standard message and data rates apply. We'll get to the latest details on that and have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So according to federal officials, there were bump stock attachments all over the place in that room that the Las Vegas shooter had. And he used them to help kill all those people there. I pretty much predicted that this was going to happen. I think a lot of people did. It was pretty predictable that the one thing that the Republicans and maybe the Trump administration and others would be okay with is banning those kind of devices. Now, believe it or not, those devices have not been around very long. In fact, it was 2010 under the Obama administration and his ATF that approved them and said they were legal. Now, after Newtown, 2012, Dianne Feinstein, Democrat, in her bill on gun control, it would have banned them. But a lot of Republicans seem to be on board with it. I mean, I would be okay with it. I wonder why they are illegal. I mean, if automatic weapons are illegal, then to make a device that kind of makes your semi-automatic and automatic seems common sense that probably should be illegal too. Do I think it's really going to make a difference in anything? Maybe. But this is the only mass shooting that I'm aware of that device was used. So if we think that the left is going to be appeased by this and say, okay, well, we did something, and that's what I'm hearing. We have to do something. I don't really care what it is. It's just as long as it's something. But do I think the left's going to be appeased by this and we'll be able to move on? No, I doubt it. In fact, here's a little audio from Chris Todd of Meet the Press. He was on MSNBC, Meet the Press Daily. He was talking about how this is really just a start. Here it is.
Good evening. I'm Chuck Todd here in Washington, and welcome to MTP Daily. Well, folks, some Republicans finally seem ready to have a debate on something involving guns, except it's an issue where there might not be any debate, and it's not really about guns, at least not in the way you might think. Instead, it's over a gun accessory that practically nobody had ever heard of until Las Vegas gunman Stephen Paddock apparently retrofitted at least a dozen firearms with a device called a bump fire stock. This device, which is legal right now, allows you to convert a semi-automatic weapon, which is also legal, into something that operates more like an automatic weapon, which is not legal. The big question, is this actually an opening for a debate on more gun regulations, or is it more of a ruse to avoid that debate?
So at the end he goes, is this just a ruse to avoid the debate by the Republicans? Of course, that's what he thinks of. So that's going to be the issue now. The Democrats, the left, are going to say, well, this was just a ruse. We have to go much, much farther than this. Of course, that's what's going to happen. 407-916-5400. Let's take a call here. Let's go to James in Kissimmee. James, what's your take on this?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing okay. It's Friday.
Oh, there you go. I'm just doing some math here, man. I mean, you got a man with no training, and it was approximately 8 minutes, and he's going to hit 59 people. Out of those 500-plus wounded, you figure half of them were trampled. So we're still looking at this guy hitting over 200-something people in an 8-minute span with no training, out shooting every Marine to ever carry a gun. Something doesn't add up. And then during this, I work overnight. I was awake. You were seeing people's Facebook Lives. You could see they were taken down. You could see people getting shot in the neck, shot in the leg. And these things are happening from different angles. The police scanners confirm there are multiple gunmen. This is like the worst math I've ever seen. Nothing adds up here.
Okay. Well, what's your take then?
And the fact that they're pushing silencers of all things, which gun control and silencers.
Well, that was Hillary Clinton. Yeah, it was silly.
Yeah,
stupid.
and yeah, she can't get up for Benghazi, but she's got to get up to push this one. I don't think it may not have been her. It was an opportune thing. There was something posted on 4chan. It's not validated, but it disappeared.
Okay, that's fine. I'm not getting into that stuff. I've seen so much stuff online about this. Oh, here's proof of a second shooter. And you see a flashing light. That's not proof of a second shooter. Could have been anything. Oh, the police scanner said there were multiple shooters. Well, there's echoes. They don't know where it's coming from. The chaos. There's chaos in the middle of it. They don't know. So now I'm supposed to believe that the feds are lying to us. It's a big conspiracy by Hillary Clinton. Come on, people. I'm just not into all that stuff. I'm sorry.
All heck breaks out during combat of any kind. That's why they call it a fog of war, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. But, I mean, they were talking about, this video proves there was a second shooter on one of the lower floors. Oh, I guess they just fixed the window overnight real quick. I'm just, no. We were supposed to be taking calls on the bump stocks and whether you think that should be banned and why, or if it will make a difference at all and what comes next. Not conspiracy theories. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. It's 720 and Good Morning Orlando. Ow! Looking at the text line here, Interesting takes from a bunch of people. One person says, yes, ban bump stocks, but no, it will not solve anything. And that was from an NRA member. Another person said this, which I thought was interesting. I'm not an expert on this. Says bump stocks slow up to 15 rounds a second cycling rates. He says it's not difficult to shoot a semi-auto at about 8 to 10 rounds a second. So it increases it about 5 to 7 rounds a second, according to him. It's very interesting. Another person said on the text line, from a gun owner, bump stocks should be banned. Their only real purpose is to circumvent the intent of the law. But this guy, there you go. That's from a gun owner. All right, let's take a call here. Let's go to Carlos in Orlando. Carlos, what's your take on this?
Well, when I first learned about bump stocks, I said, you know what, that's a really bad idea. But I like it. I was going to buy one for my AR, which I don't have anymore. And I changed my mind. And I'm like, you know what? Some nut jobs is going to buy 3 or 4 of these, 3 or 4 bodies. They're going to go to a mall with 100-round drums. They're going to block the exit on a cafeteria in a busy mall. And they're going to do a real massacre. And that's when that's when they're going to do something about it. They don't need to invite a 300-400, massacre in the mall because they don't want to do something about it. 100-round drums, that's overkill. Bump stock, way overkill. We don't need that on the market.
Interesting. All right. Interesting take. I like that. Let's go to Phil in Sanford. Phil, what's your take?
Well, good morning, Yaffee. If you're not familiar with a bump stock, bump firing is basically just letting the gun bounce off your shoulder and recoil back into your finger, and you can hold your finger real steady. The trigger will just keep bouncing off of your finger. And anybody can bump fire a semi-automatic with a little practice. You don't even need stock.
Really?
No, you can. I know people that can bump fire pretty good without the stock. Now, what the stock does, it makes it easy. It's basically a loose, sloppy-fitting stock that you can hold tight to your shoulder, and the gun itself bounces inside the stock.
Interesting.
It takes a little skill to get it to use it at that rate.
So
you have to practice with it.
So you don't think this law is really going to do much anything then?
It's not going to keep anybody from bump firing.
Huh.
The bump fire stock makes it easier. You can definitely do it faster and for a longer time because it takes a lot of skill to get the rhythm.
Gotcha.
Bouncing the gun off your shoulder, and the bump fire stock makes it easier.
Gotcha.
But, I don't think it'll change anything.
All right, Phil. I appreciate your call. I see. That's why I like this audience and give me expertise on stuff I did not know. Let's go to Jeff in Mineola. Jeff, what's your take?
Hey, Yappy, I don't mean to be the bearer of old news if you mentioned it, so I apologize if you had, but that law apparently came in place in 2010, and I think someone ought to look into the question as to why these congressmen are so surprised it's on the books. Weren't they in office at that time?
Yeah, you're right. I was looking it up. It not necessarily a law. What it is the ATF, and I appreciate your call. You're exactly right. It was 2010. What it is the ATF approves different devices. So the ATF, under the Obama administration, looked at this and decided that, yes, it is fine and it is legal and gun sellers can sell it. So it's not necessarily like they passed a law that approved it, but it's just the bureaucracy approved it. But it happened under Obama, believe it or not. Let's take one more call here. Let's go to Steve in St. Cloud. Steve, what's your take on all this?
Well, I'm a little bummed out that Bill stole my thunder. But anyway, I was going to mention that same thing about the bump stocks. I've got several AR-15s, don't own a bump stock, have no desire to, because there are a couple different techniques, which I won't get into detail, that will make any of my rifles operate in a fully automatic mode, which is some simple practice. So it's just a device. I'm afraid of the slippery slope. If they start outlawing parts, then what's next?
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm worried about.
And I appreciate your call. That's always the issue when it comes to this, because with the left, it's not going to be good enough. It's not. You just heard I played Chuck Todd, and I said Chris Todd earlier. I'm sorry, it's Chuck Todd. I played Chuck Todd earlier, and he said, is this just a ruse to end the debate? Shouldn't this be the start of the conversation is basically what he was getting at. It's not going to be enough for them. But I think this will be passed in Congress and eventually will be banned. It was kind of predictable, in my opinion. All right, Deborah Roberts is going to come in the studio, and she's going to talk about the latest news, including the latest information on what the NRA thinks about the bump stock ban. And a woman files a lawsuit against Junior Mints for a lack of mints. Of course a woman did. That sounds about right in 2017 America. All right, it is 7:30 on Good Morning Orlando.
That's right. Get it moving.
I'm not allowed to speak until the song gets to the good part, apparently.
No, you can talk. Oh, wait. Okay, now we can talk.
What the listeners, what they don't know is what was going on behind the scenes, where Tom Benson was literally acting like her DJ. Was like, I'm playing this song for you, Deborah Roberts, at this time.
And you know what the coolest part about it? I don't even have to ask. He's just such a good DJ. He knows what bump music just gets you moving in the morning. It's a Friday. We're in a Friday frame of mind.
You missed your calling there, Tom Benson.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
these years could have been Master DJ Benson.
The DJ was from years gone by, way before I got into talk radio.
I bet it was back in the day when you actually had to put the needle on the record.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Slip cue. Do slip cues.
Oh, wow. Mike is going, slip what?
I have no idea what that is.
Was it a slip disc? Or?
I really have no idea what that is.
What you do is you start the turntable, but you hold the record with your finger until the second you wanted it.
Oh.
And then you'd let the record go and the music would start.
Oh, sounds hard.
It was. Back in the day, even when I started on reel-to-reel tape, trying to edit reel-to-reel, if you can edit reel-to-reel tape, you can edit anything in the world.
Broadcasting history here from Deborah Roberts and Tom Benson.
Back in my day.
All right, Deb, what else you got for us this morning?
Well, our big story of the day, this story caught me by surprise, a lot of people as well, is that the National Rifle Association is calling for an immediate review of federal regulations on bump stocks. In its first statement since the deadly mass shooting in Las Vegas, the NRA urged the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to determine if the devices comply with federal law. About a dozen bump stocks were found in the hotel room of the Las Vegas gunman. The device allows semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic weapons. The NRA, however, stopped short of calling for new legislation. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. All right, a new lawsuit. This is an important lawsuit, Mike Yaffee.
Yes, I'm paying attention.
Is accusing Junior Mints of shortchanging customers. You like a Junior Mint?
They're okay. I mean, it's not something I go for all the time, but they're good. I like them.
It's my go-to movie snack.
Really?
Yes, I love me some Junior Mints.
You're not the only one. A lot of people like them.
Yeah, they do. Well, one New York woman filed a federal lawsuit. Federal lawsuit against Tootsie Roll Industries, which makes the product, saying the packaging is mostly filled with air. Yeah, should be brimming to the top with Junior Mints. The suit says that consumers are getting less candy, quote, than they bargained for.
Okay.
The lawsuit also...
I didn't know there was a law that said they had to fill it up completely in the box.
Well...
Is that something Congress should get to work on?
I think it's a very pressing issue. Right after bump stocks, you got to deal with the Junior Mint shortage.
Look, we'll get to gun control eventually, but we have to deal with this Junior Mint problem first.
It's a big problem. The lawsuit also says similar products like Milk Duds have less air in their packaging. Tootsie Roll Industries hasn't yet responded to the lawsuit.
Some Milk Duds.
But you know what? This is something that's happening to a lot of products. You're still paying the same price for, you like pecan sandies?
Not really.
Okay. God, every time I bring up a food product. Okay, pecan sandies with hot sauce on it?
No.
All right. Well,
I don't put hot sauce on my candy.
I was joking because you like hot sauce. So I was thinking the hot sauce and the pecan sandies would make. All right. Anyway.
I thought maybe you really believed I'd put hot sauce on my candy.
No, I was just trying to move the joke forward.
Oh, I killed it. Oops. But go ahead.
But you get less pecans, because ever since the economic recession, you're getting less and less and less for the products, but you're still paying the same price.
Oh, sneaky.
Exactly. I think there's some merit to this Junior Mint lawsuit right here.
I have a feeling it's not going to go anywhere. Because I think they actually have to post the weight on the box.
Yeah, they do.
And that's what they're going to say.
That's what they say. It's measured by weight, not content.
Yeah.
Still. Taco Bell is entering the fashion world.
Oh, that was the last thing I expected you to end that sentence with.
I bet you did. Yeah. Courtesy of Forever 21. Starting October 11th, just a mere few days away, limited edition Taco Bell themed clothing.
It's actually smart.
Will be available for purchase at Forever 21 stores. The company released a joint news release saying the two like-minded brands, together at the intersection of culture and innovation, are joining forces to make fall wardrobes a whole lot saucier.
Oh,
yeah.
I get it.
The clothing line will include tops, bodysuits. Oh, yeah, that's what I want. A Taco Bell-themed bodysuit, hoodies, and sweatshirts.
A Taco Bell-themed bodysuit.
I don't even want to ask.
But that kind of stuff, that kind of trendy stuff is popular. I actually bet it will do well.
I do, too.
I mean, you go to, like, Walmart and Target, they have, like, Pepsi shirts and stuff like that,
Plus, look at all the hoopla that came out when, the McDonald's onesies.
Yeah.
The
ones I were upset because they weren't what I thought they were.
Exactly.
I thought when you said they were Hamburglar ones, and I thought they were going to make you look like the Hamburglar. And no, it just had hamburgers on it.
I never knew your life dream was to look like the Hamburglar. If I ever see a costume
my dreams were crushed.
I'm so sorry. Finally, a Danish brewery is taking recycled beer seriously. Copenhagen craft brewer Nabro Brygoose is putting out Pilsner, a beer made with human urine.
I'm just impressed you got that whole sentence out without messing it up. That was impressive. But go ahead.
Thank you.
It's made with what?
Human urine.
Why?
The urine doesn't actually go into the beer. Why they said that, because when I read the rest of this, you're going to say, so what? Doesn't matter. Never going to drink it. Mm-hmm. Instead, the waste from urinals at a huge music festival were used to fertilize the barley that goes into making the beer. The company CEO says it's part of
fertilizer is usually kind of disgusting things anyway.
Well, yeah, and the company CEO says it's part of the brewery's effort to make everything organic. The first batch of urine was enough to make 60,000 bottles of beer.
Oh, well, all right.
Think about that the next time you sing 100 bottles of beer on the wall. 100 bottles of beer. Take one down, pass it around.
No, it's going to be in my head for the rest of the day.
You're welcome.
All right, Deb, thank you so much. So we're going to talk to our friend Ed Reardon from Central Florida Honor Flight. They have an honor flight coming up, and we're going to talk all about that so you can welcome home our vets. We have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. So a couple of years ago, Bud and I had the honor and privilege to accompany some vets, some military veterans, on an honor flight to Washington, D.C. Now, Honor Flight of Central Florida, great organization that takes military vets to D.C. to be able to see the memorials if they've never had a chance to do it. And this is something they continue to do every year, and they have some honor flights coming up, and I get to talk to one of my favorite people, Ed Reardon from Honor Flight of Central Florida, about that. How are you, Ed?
Good morning, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to talk to Bud, because I know that when I do, our message is being heard by the most patriotic radio audience in all of Central Florida.
Oh, yeah.
And we are just so excited about our first fall flight mission, which is tomorrow, October 7th, and then the second one following up just 2 weeks later on Saturday, October 21st. And we're just blessed, Mike, to be able to take 24 of our hometown heroes up to Washington, D.C., so that they can view and reflect at the memorials that were built for them. You having been on the trip, you know how dedicated we are to paying an honor to these heroes, because they've honored us with their service, Mike, and it's high time that we honor them.
And so you have two coming up. You have one that's tomorrow, and then you have another one that's October 21st. And the reason why we brought you on is because we want our audience to be able to give them the welcome home they deserve. So after they go to D.C. To see the memorials, you fly them back that night, and they deserve a big welcome home. And tell our listeners how they can participate in that.
Well, we're pleased to be taking 24 of our hometown heroes, 8 of whom served in World War II, 8 in Korea, and 8 in Vietnam. They served us in the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force. Our youngest is 70. Our most senior is 97. And at that age, Mike, I'm certain they would agree every day is a bonus. So what we need to show them while we still have them, that although we don't know them all, we owe them all. And turn out at Orlando Airport tomorrow evening at 10 p.m. and join us in the atrium off Terminal A to welcome our group when they return from their day in the Capitol. You know, our Vietnam vets in particular, Mike, and we're now starting to serve a larger population of the Vietnam vets.
Right.
Not only did they never get a welcome home, as is the case with our World War II in Korea, but because of those tumultuous times, many of them were treated with great disrespect, and they carry that burden with them today. So it's important that the public shows them that at this time and in hindsight that we recognize their service, because, Mike, you know, we can't all be heroes. Some of us have to stand on the curb and clap when they go by. So I hope the public will join us tomorrow night and do just that at Orlando International Airport when we arrive on Flight 3639. And we put down it. Yes, sir.
Well, I was just going to ask, what time do you want people to be there?
We're going to ask folks to be assembled in the terminal at 10 p.m. Our flight is due to arrive at 9:55 p.m., and it takes us just a short time to deplane and get through into the terminal. So we expect between 10 and 10:15 we'll be arriving into Terminal A in the atrium area. And we have some special events that are planned as part of the welcome home tomorrow night. So those folks that come on down will get to witness some other folks and some certain groups that are going to be participating in the honor. And I don't want to disclose that, but it's a great family event, Mike. So and I know that you've witnessed these. So you know, folks that appreciate our veterans for their service now have an opportunity to show that appreciation. But they should bring flags and signs that they've made. And most definitely, it's a great family event and a teaching event, too, because how often do you get to see 24 hometown heroes as old as 97 assembled in one place at one time and are given the opportunity to thank them for what they've done for us?
Yes, it definitely is a great opportunity. So if you and your family are free tomorrow, go to the Orlando International Airport. The plane arrives at 10 p.m. They want you to be in the atrium in Terminal A, which is next to the Starbucks over there, and just give these vets the welcome home they deserve. Ed, I really appreciate you coming on with us, and we'll bring you back on again for the next honor flight.
And, Mike, I always appreciate the chance to speak to you, and you're doing a great job hosting for Bud. We appreciate you, and Honor Flight Central Florida appreciates your support.
Oh, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ed. Have a good weekend. And have a safe trip.
Great day,
have
Mike.
A safe trip. All right. So we have the Rush Morning Update and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Good morning, Orlando. Good Friday morning.
Woohoo.
I knew I was going to get something out of her for Friday. I thought the same thing. This is Orlando's news, weather, and traffic here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Filling in for Bud, I'm Michael Yaffee.
And I'm Deborah Roberts, and it's been a tough week for all of us. Our top stories this morning, the NRA calls for bump stock regulations, and VP Pence talks Puerto Rico on a Central Florida visit. We'll have the details coming up in 1 minute.
So Professor Yaffee is going to have a little history lesson on the Second Amendment.
I'm not kidding you. I walked in and he was reading a book.
We'll talk about that this half hour.
And good Friday morning, it's 8:03 on News Radio 102.5. The National Rifle Association is calling for an immediate review of federal regulations on bump stocks. In its first statement since the deadly mass shooting in Las Vegas, the NRA urged the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms to determine if the devices comply with federal law. About a dozen bump stocks were found in the hotel room of the Las Vegas gunman. The device allows semi-automatic rifles to function like fully automatic weapons, but the NRA stopped short of calling for new legislation. It also criticized some lawmakers for pushing gun control following the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. This news brought to you by Trusco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. Turns out the Las Vegas shooter looked into hotel rooms near other large events and in other large cities, including Boston and Chicago, according to investigators. Chicago police say Stephen Paddock booked rooms at a hotel during last summer's Lollapalooza music festival near Grant Park. They say he booked a hotel room in Chicago around the time of the show in early August, but never showed up. Senior law enforcement officials in Boston also said Paddock looked into hotel rooms near Fenway Park earlier this year. Back in the Sunshine State, an appearance by a white nationalist leader at the University of Florida canceled in September is rescheduled for later this month. Under threat of a federal lawsuit, the school negotiated a new date and has announced that Richard Spencer will speak October 19th at the Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. UF had cited safety concerns for canceling the original date and says that security is being beefed up for Spencer's appearance at a cost of at least $500,000.
You know, can I tell you something? I hate pretty much everything that guy says.
But he has a right to say it.
Well, exactly. It's just sad to me that they have to have all that security for him. I mean, if you don't like what the guy is saying, ignore him.
I don't think it's just that part of it, though, Mike. I think we need to go back to Charlottesville and remember, do we want the streets of Gainesville to be lit with torches?
Well, I don't want any of that.
Right.
But I believe in the right to say it.
But if it were only just him and not his factions that would come along for the ride, maybe specifically to incite violence and dissent, it would, if it were just an issue of that. But I could see where the university...
I completely understand their concern because, yeah, that's what happened. You had two radical sides fighting in the streets, but I think that's the problem is they have a right to say it, and we just need to let them have that right.
And I think now that they're doing it October, we've had some distance from Charlottesville, I think maybe this time we might end up being the national example.
Well, I think they're going to have really tight security.
Oh, I think they will as well.
I think that's what's going to stop most of it.
I hope, you know, without them having to shell out too much money.
Yeah, that's another issue with all this is the money.
Exactly, because who's going to pay for it?
The university.
Right, exactly. But will the students
although
eventually?
I think a lot of times they charge the groups. I'm not sure exactly how. I'd have to look that up because I think sometimes they actually charge the groups that invited the speaker to help provide security and stuff like that. But I think it depends.
And of course, that's going to be a big story once that date rolls around.
Right.
So we'll stay on top of that, let you know if there's any late-breaking details. When it comes to helping those in Puerto Rico, the vice president says Florida is setting the standard. Mike Pence praised relief efforts yesterday while touring Central Florida. He visited Orlando International Airport's Disaster Relief Center and Iglesia de Dios Church in Kissimmee.
But as the president said, we will get through this. And we will get through this together.
He says progress is being made on the island and Puerto Rico's best days are still to come. And Pence will visit hurricane-ravaged Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands today. Meanwhile, emergency items you may have stashed away for Hurricane Irma can go to a good cause. Florida Hospital Orlando is holding a relief drive this weekend for residents of Puerto Rico. Donations of canned goods, bottled water, baby food, batteries, and other items can be dropped off Sunday at Calvary Orlando Church. You can get a full list of accepted items at icflorida.com.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
It's a good idea. If you have those extra items, you don't need them now, let someone else who does need them have them.
And it's perfect because then next year you may not want to eat that same canned food or whatever. So it's better than just letting your hurricane supplies go to waste, like you said. Some residents in Brevard County could unfortunately experience a record they'd rather not see. The St. Johns River today could rise to a level never seen before in Cocoa of more than 17.5 feet. That could lead to flooding in some homes, and the county is already under a flood watch. After a week of rain, some homeowners are already dealing with flooded yards, and one Cocoa resident tells Florida Today she's never seen anything like this before, which was why they started yesterday once again handing out sandbags to residents outside the jail complex in Sharp. It was while supplies last. No idea if they have any more, but you may want to call ahead. And finally, a story I know is I found this shocking. Facebook users could outnumber Christians worldwide before the end of the year.
You found that shocking, really?
Yeah. Yes. And
I'm not as shocked by that for some reason. Not because it seems like everyone on the planet wants Facebook. So of every different religion.
Except this one. The social media site currently has 2 billion active users each month. New York Magazine is out with a story that says the number of Facebook users is growing by about 17% each year and could encompass 1/3 of the world's population by this time next year. That would be more Facebook users than Christians, which is the world's largest religious group. In 2015, Pew Research Center found there were 2,300,000,000 Christians worldwide.
Wow. And more Facebook users. I mean, that's just where our world is. That's crazy. Social media taking over.
Yeah. WFLA News Time. It's 8:09. You can read about an NSA contractor who brought some classified information home, and look at that. The Russians ended up getting their hands on it. Get the details at 1025WFLA.com. The third hour of Good Morning Orlando with Mike Yaffee starts now.
News, weather, traffic. This is Good Morning Orlando on News Radio 1025.
It's almost time for history class.
Pay attention.
Make sure you're on time. I do not like tardiness. I'm gonna talk a little bit of history of the Second Amendment. Professor Yaffee will inform you on that. We have that in Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 1025 WFLA.
Good morning, class. Good morning, class.
Yes, it is. Welcome back to Good Morning Orlando. This is Professor Yaffee here, Professor Yaffee, who is wants to give a little bit of a history lesson on the Second Amendment. There's been a lot of talk about it lately, obviously, because every time there's some kind of mass shooting, people call for gun control. And then there's this whole debate on what the Second Amendment was really all about. You have that new New York Times conservative writer who is saying we should get rid of the Second Amendment. Some conservative, of course, that's the one the New York Times found. And then there's debate on, well, it was just for militias. That's it. It's just for the well-regulated militia. And we have the Army and Navy now. We don't need the militias. That's all it's really for, not for the everyday citizen. We hear this all the time. But what was the Second Amendment really for? So I went back to the Federalist Papers, where they talked about the Constitution, defending the Constitution. And I found that Federalist number 46 was written by James Madison under the name Publius. Now, I can't read all of Federalist 46. It's pretty long. But he was addressing one of the biggest complaints of the new Constitution by the Anti-Federalists was that they were afraid that it gave the central government in Washington too much power. They were afraid that the central government under the new Constitution that they were trying to push forward and get ratified in these states, they thought that the central government on the new Constitution would have too much power and it would basically take over the state governments. Unfortunately, that has happened a little bit too much. But they were really worried that the state governments would not be able to defend themselves against the federal government. The Anti-Federalists complained about this. Patrick Henry especially talked about it in the Virginia ratifying convention when he debated James Madison on this. In fact, Patrick Henry didn't even like the first words of the Constitution because he said, why does it say we the people? It should say we the states. So it showed something that they were definitely concerned about. They were always concerned about this. And so James Madison addressed this in Federalist 46. He talked about different ways that the states will still have their own rights. The states will be able to keep their own sovereignty, but still the federal government would have its role as well. But he addressed something here that's very interesting. He said, reading here now from Federalist number 46, he said, let a regular army fully equal to the resources of the country be formed, and let it be entirely at the devotion of the federal government. Talking about, this is what he said some of the Anti-Federalists said would happen, that they would form this regular army and try to take too much power. So he says, okay, let's see if that happened. He continues on. He said, still, it would not be going too far to say that the state governments with the people on their side would be able to repel the danger. The highest number to which, according to the best computation, a standing army can be carried in any country does not exceed 100th part of the whole number of souls, or 1/25th part of the number able to bear arms. The proportion would not yield in the United States an army of more than 25 or 30,000 men. This is at the time. To these would be opposed a militia amounting to near 500,000 of citizens with arms in their hands, officered by men chosen from among themselves, fighting for the common liberties, and united and conducted by governments possessing their affections and confidence. It may well be doubted whether a militia thus circumstanced could ever be conquered by such a proportion of regular troops. Those who are best acquainted with the late successful resistance of the country against the British arms will be most inclined to deny the possibility of it. Besides the advantage of being armed, which the Americans possess over the people of almost every other nation, still do, the existence of subordinate governments to which the people are attached and by which the militia officers are appointed forms a barrier against the enterprises of ambition more insurmountable than any which a simple government of any form can admit to. And he talks about this more, but his basic point is this. The main reason that they wanted people to be able to bear arms was that if the federal government got too much power, became tyrannical, and then tried to take that power away from the state governments or the people, they would have one last check on that power. And that check on that power, according to his words here, was an armed population of American citizens. Yes, he talks about them forming militias, but militias were just groups of regular people who were armed themselves. In order for people to be able to form militias, they have to be able to bear arms as individuals and then take those arms and form a militia. The whole purpose of the Second Amendment was one last check against tyranny of the federal government possibly in the future. That is only possible if we have the right to bear arms. And back then it was considered the right to bear military equipment. That was the military equipment at the time. Now, there were other reasons as well. Self-defense, that was talked about at the time. But this idea that, well, in today's time, we don't need that. There's always the possibility of tyranny by a federal government. It happened throughout the 20th century in Europe and other places. It was supposed to be one last check against a tyrannical government, was an armed population of ordinary citizens, so that if the time needed to come, they could group together and defend themselves. That's what the Second Amendment was really all about. The left doesn't want you to know that, and if you point that out, they say you're crazy. That could never happen. Well, I think that's short-sighted. As bad as these mass shootings are, if you read the history of civilization, most atrocities, most mass killings against men were done by states, by governments, not by individuals. Think about that before you want to take away the arms of regular average citizens. 407-916-5400, text to 23680, standard message and data rates apply. It's 8:22 on Good Morning Orlando. So on my show that I do in the evenings on this station, Beyond Reason Radio, you can catch the podcasts at beyondreasonradio.com. Didn't get a chance to really do it this week, so I'm hosting the morning show. But I usually try to find what I call the voice of reason of the day. Now, I'm the true voice of reason, of course, in a world that is beyond reason. But I try to find other voices of reason as well, and good topics. It's cuts I find from certain people that I like and I play. So on the whole gun control topic, I found this cut from Greg Gutfeld, who is on the 5 on Fox. But he has actually some books out that I've read that are pretty good. But he was talking about this on the 5 a couple days ago, and I really liked it. So I wanted to play his little monologue here. This is the voice of reason of the day, Greg Gutfeld.
So last night, guess what the late-nighters had to say?
Now, I come from a place where we don't have shootings at this frequency, so it's hard for me to fathom.
Is that the best plan D.C. has for dealing with gun violence? When there's a shooting, we just pray for a miracle?
I'm sorry that we live in a world where there are people who will put a gun before your lives.
Congress can be heroes by doing literally anything. Universal background checks, or come up with a better answer. Enforce Obama's executive order that denied mentally ill gun purchases, or a better answer. Reinstate the assault weapons ban, or come up with a better answer. Anything but nothing. Doing nothing is cowardice.
Now, I tried to come up with a similar montage about the 4,300 shooting victims in Chicago last year. No luck. And here I thought this was about guns. But last night was all about unison. People claim gun control talk is being silenced. This is silence?
Sorry,
no, I come from a place where we don't have
shootings
at this frequency, so it's hard.
Look, I don't blame them at all. In the circles that they run in, such outrage is required. And they mean it. So what do they have in mind specifically besides do something, do anything? Colbert, at least he had suggestions, but would they have stopped this fiend? But I get it. I throw the kitchen sink at terrorism, a sentiment mocked many times by these very same people. But unlike them, I'm a little flexible. Sure, let's ban bump stocks. It would make me feel better, though I'm not sure it would help because I think people will make their own. You can make your own guns now. And should that matter? According to Reason magazine, from 1992 to 2014, the number of U.S. civilian firearms have increased by 50%, while the murder rate has dropped by more than half. Think about that. That's amazing. So more guns doesn't equal more death. But still the media focuses on the gun, especially early on, before all is known. Why is that? My theory is that you focus on a weapon allows you to spread some blame onto people that you already dislike. Gun owners, Republicans, Trump voters. Sometimes it feels like a class thing. Remember that CBS lawyer saying she had no sympathy for the victims because they were gun-loving Republicans? She got fired. And for what? Saying what she thought her friends wanted to hear.
All right, that was my voice of reason of the day. I really liked what he had to say on that, so I thought I would share that with you. We have Deborah Roberts coming in at the bottom of the hour to update the latest news. And then after Deborah Roberts, we have Sound Judgment. If you want to get on the phones early, you can call 407-916-5400 for your chance to win a great prize. We have that and Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. It's Friday.
Yay! Say it again. Say it again.
And it's Deborah Roberts.
Yay.
And are you sure you're excited? Because don't you have to work this weekend?
Maybe, maybe not.
Okay, hopefully not.
We're hoping not. As it stands right now, three of the most western counties in Florida are the only ones that could be impacted by what could become Hurricane Nate.
Nate is just playing around with you.
Yes,
he is. Not being nice.
He's just dangling that weekend in front of me. Yeah, you want a weekend? You want a weekend? You want a weekend?
So what is the latest on that storm?
The latest on that storm is that it continues on its track toward New Orleans or Biloxi. It's picked up some speed, though. So it's trucking along. And the good thing is it's not going to affect us here in Central Florida. What we have to deal with is that tropical wave that's near Miami. That's what's been throwing all of this wet weather on top of us this week.
Yeah, it's funny. My brother's in town from Dallas, and he's always fascinated by, like, tropical storms and stuff. And I'm like, look, you got a tropical storm today.
Yeah, look.
He's like, this is just rain. This isn't, like, cool wind and stuff. I'm like, you're weird. I don't want that stuff.
Picky. Should have been here in early September.
Yeah, I know.
You could have had all the rain.
I actually when we were in the worst of Irma, I was video chatting with him so he could watch it.
Oh, cool.
He's such a nerd about that stuff.
Well, what a way to hook your brother up, though, Mike.
I know.
Kudos to you.
I know. I'm such a nice brother.
You are. A nice guy.
So what's the latest news, Deb?
Our biggest story of the day is the NRA, and the White House says it, too, is open to a review of the automatic weapon device used by the Las Vegas shooter. Bump stocks are used to make semi-automatic weapons fire repeatedly like an automatic weapon. The NRA is calling on the government to review its bump stocks, comply with federal law, and whether further regulations are called for, but it criticized lawmakers as well who are pushing for gun control following the massacre. This news brought to you by Trustco Bank, Florida's hometown bank. I'm hoping at this hour of the morning, Mike, we can be assured that all children are fully tucked into their classrooms and will not hear my next story.
Disclaimer.
Archaeologists say they have discovered the tomb of Santa Claus in southern Turkey, not at the North Pole.
I don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, the original...
He's alive. You can't.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
The spirit of Santa is always alive. However, the original St. Nicholas lived in southern Turkey 1,700 years ago. St. Nick is said to have given away his wealth to work with the poor as a monk. On his feast day in December, people used to leave out their shoes so that he'd put coins in them overnight. Over the next 1,000 years, the man morphed into the legend that we know of and eventually became Father Christmas.
Which eventually became Santa Claus.
Exactly. Because Santa is Latin or Spanish for saint.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I like how we had a history lesson from Professor Deborah Roberts.
Yes. And no detention for you.
Really? I get a gold star?
You get a gold star.
Yay.
And if you thought the fact that it was Friday and not raining yet was the best thing about waking up this morning, think again. Today is possibly one of the nicest of all theme days, World Smile Day.
Oh, okay.
Invented by the man behind the smiley face illustration created back in 1963 as a day to perform acts of kindness. Now, is there anything better than making someone smile?
No.
Well, here are some of the most heartwarming, funny, cute, and enjoyable things to add a little extra joy to your day. We'll give you 5. Number 1. This is so cute. Seahorses mate for life and travel by holding onto each other's tails to make sure they don't get lost.
Aww.
Oh, isn't that cute? How about another animal one? Notice there's not going to be a lot of people things on here.
So they don't friend zone you if you're a seahorse?
They're smarter than that. Penguins mate for life, and they propose by giving their crush a pebble.
Really?
Yeah.
That is cool.
Isn't that cool? Number 3.
I'm going to do that. Can I propose giving a pebble? No? I don't think that'll...
Well, it depends. It better be a pretty big-sized rock. And that better be one clear-cut pebble.
Yeah, I feel like that would only work if I was proposing to a penguin.
Yes, it would.
I don't plan on doing
it. SeaWorld's open this weekend. Give it a shot. Number 3, to make you smile, all that needs to be said, puppies and kittens.
Of course.
It speaks for itself. Number 4. The actors who voiced Mickey and Minnie Mouse got married in real life.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Wow.
And then number 5, there's actually a website that exists just to get virtual hugs from people when you're feeling a bit down. You can find it.
How do you get a virtual hug?
I don't know, Mike. Just play the game forward.
Yes. I know. I'm just like ruining your smile.
Wah, wah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mike Buzzkill Yaffee, ladies and gentlemen. Woo! All right. I want you to go to this website during the next commercial break. It's called The Nicest Place on the Inter.net.
On the Inter.net.
Yeah. So they split up the word internet. So,
yeah. Nicest place in the Inter.net. Gotcha.
All right. So go to the nicest place on the Inter.net whenever you need a virtual hug from some stranger when you're feeling a bit down. Someone who just simply wants to lift your spirits.
Cool.
And if that doesn't work, think about seahorses.
All right.
Or pebbles. Or penguins.
I'm going to think about doggies and kitties.
Yeah, I am too.
And puppies.
And puppies.
I love your puppies.
I know. Who doesn't love a puppy?
Is that it for you, Steph?
Oh, I could keep going right up until the end of the show, Mike. You know that.
I believe you. All right. But we have to give our audience a chance to win a great prize for sound judgment.
All right.
And we have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. And it is that time where you can win a great prize. And Bryce, our call screener, is going to tell you what you can win.
A gift certificate for dinner for 2 at Dove Cote Brazier during Orlando's Magic Dining Month. Orlando Magical Dining Month has been extended to October 12th at just $35. Each magical dining meal is a great deal, offering an appetizer, entree, and dessert that is valued around $45. Orlando Magical Dining Month is sponsored by American Express. You can search participating restaurants and menus at orlandomagicaldining.com.
So free food is basically what I heard there. I love free food. But another thing that I love is movies. And there is a new movie coming out this weekend that I really want to see. I don't know if I'll see it this weekend. But it's the new Blade Runner movie with Harrison Ford, Blade Runner 2049. Here is a little bit of the trailer for that.
Every leap of civilization was built off the back of slaves. Replicants are the future, but I can only make so many.
So there's the trailer for the new one. The sound judgment question, though. What year did the original Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, what year did the original come out? 407-916-5400. Let's go to line 3. Line 3, what year did the original Blade Runner come out?
Oh, man.
Let's take a guess.
83?
Oh, you are so close. You were a lot closer than I thought the first guess would be. All right, let's go to line 4. Line 4, what year did the first Blade Runner come out in theaters?
1966.
Oh, you weren't even trying, you loser. All right, let's go to line 1. Line 1, what year did it come out?
1982.
That is right.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You won the gift card for some free food.
Free food.
Yeah, you're like me. We both love free food. Who doesn't love free food?
Can't complain when it's free.
Are you a movie guy at all?
Love them.
Are you going to go see the new one?
Well, I maybe. I don't know. It's hard with 3 kids.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. Did you see
get it on Netflix?
Yeah, that's true. It'll probably be a little while, but yeah. Have you seen the original?
I think when I was younger, but I'd have to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, it was really good, but it's been a while since I've seen it too. I need to go back and watch it. All righty.
Then go see the new one.
Yeah. It looks really good, and the reviews I've seen are really good as well. All right, What's your name? Where are you calling from today?
Sean from Oviedo.
Sean from Oviedo, and you sound pretty excited about the prize.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Awesome. All right, well, I'll put you on hold, and Bryce will tell you. Oh, thank you so much for listening. Bryce will tell you how you can pick up your prize. So, it's Friday. That means I want to end the show with some fun. On my show, we do a segment on things that made Yaffee laughy. So at the end of the show, that's what we're going to do. Something that made me laugh, a story I found. So we'll do that. We have Orlando's news, weather, and traffic in just 2 minutes. News Radio 102.5 WFLA. Yes, and this is Michael Yaffee, the producer, filling in for Bud. Don't worry, Bud will be back on Monday, and then I'll be in my rightful place in the control room. But right now in the control room, we have Mr. Tom Benson, who is producing. Yeah, it's Friday, so it's pretty good. And, of course, we have Bryce, who has been screening your calls. How are you, Bryce?
I'm very good. How are you?
It's pretty good. It's Friday. I want to see what you guys think of this story I'm about to get to. On my show in the evenings, if you listen, I like to lighten it up a little bit at the end, and I do stories of things that make Yaffee laughy. Yes, and who doesn't like things that made me laugh? I mean, come on. So, this story definitely makes me laugh. I found it this morning. It's happened yesterday, actually. Check out this headline. Women escape jail, then they get arrested at an escape game.
Okay.
That's right. Second escape in 24 hours proved impossible when cops showed up. So 2 women who escaped from jail in Alberta, Canada, were apparently so confident in their abilities, because they just escaped from jail, that they headed to an escape room. Now, have you guys ever done an escape room? I think we've talked about it. Have you ever done one?
I've done one. They're actually really tough.
Yeah, some of them are really tough. Some, worse than others. I did one recently, and we all died in the escape room.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we all died. It was one of those where the theme was like some kind of, you had to stop some virus from spreading or something from a lab. But no, we all died, so that was fun. But but these people, these two women were so confident because they just came from jail. Their first thought was to go to an escape room less than 24 hours later. It's just, I feel like that would be the last place I would want to go if I were them. Another escape proved impossible, however, when police officers surprised them within minutes. The scene unfolded Tuesday at SideQuest Adventures in Edmonton, which challenges visitors to escape locked rooms using a series of clues. I wonder, do you think once they realized it was criminals, they made it like extra hard for them and locked them in there so they couldn't escape from this one?
It's like they're just used to being locked in a box, so they had to go back to it.
They were missing it. They were missing
home sweet
the
home
feeling. Co-owner Rebecca Leah saw two women enter the business around 8:30 p.m. and asked some questions about the facility's rooms. And Leah then took them to see one. While I was holding that conversation with them, we kind of turned on only to find the hallway full of 5 police officers. Then they were arrested immediately, and that was the end of the conversation. While his wife was showing the woman the room, Jonathan Leah says a police officer arrived acting on a tip from a member of the public who recognized the women as those who'd escaped the Edmonton Institution for Women by jumping a fence a day earlier. Upon realizing the women were still inside the building, the officer called for backup right away. Leah told Global News, "It's funny and ironic that escaped convicts run into an escape room and get caught." Yes, I just think
stupid criminals.
Yeah, pretty stupid.
That's kind of reminiscent of a couple months back where some guy went in to rob a bar, and the bar was full of cops celebrating the retirement of another cop.
Yeah, it's exactly. Or those who think they're texting their drug dealer and they end up texting a cop.
Yeah.
There's been those stories too. So I thought I'd end with some fun. I appreciate you listening to the show today. Don't worry, Bud will be back on Monday. And make sure to check the podcast on the website. You can also follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R, named after my show Beyond Reason Radio, which you can find the podcast of that show on iHeartRadio, iTunes, anywhere podcasts are available. And, on the show, just like Bud does, God bless you, and God bless America, and I'll catch you guys next time.